Smocking is essentially embroidery on pleated fabric. The art form that we traditionally think of as smocking is primarily from the United Kingdom, and it's specifically known as English smocking, and it's been practiced in its current form for over 300 years. However, some form of stitching on pleated fabric, or smocking as we can call it, can be seen from all over Europe in paintings as old as the 1400s. Garments during this time were simply cut, and pleating or gathering was used to shape the garment and control the fullness of the fabric. Various forms of embroidery were then used to hold the pleating and provide a form of decoration. The resulting pleating could be elastic or non-elastic depending on the construction method chosen. So this painting, known as The Flight into Egypt, which dates from the early 1400s in the Netherlands, shows honeycomb smocking at the hips of the Virgin and also around the neckline. The smocking controls the fabric and provides the extra fullness needed for over the hips. It also provides the elasticity to allow the garment to be pulled on over the head, but then to be shaped and pulled in around the neck. The actual term smocking comes from the name of an English garment, the smock, worn by both women and men. Now, some histories trace the garment back to the Anglo-Saxon tunic. The Luttrell Psalter, which dates from around 1340, shows the man plowing who is wearing a tunic smock, and Chaucer describes a woman wearing a smock in The Miller's Tale in 1386. Shakespeare also references the smock in several of his plays. But language is always changing, and up until the 1700s, the word smock referred to a woman's undergarment. Men wore shirts and a full-skirted coat known as a frock. By the end of the 1700s, men were wearing a new form of garment with decoration known as a smock frock or just smock. Throughout the 1800s, smocks were the standard dress for men and boys in rural southern England and parts of Wales. The smock frock was an outer garment and was cut very full, with the smocking used to control the fullness of the fabric. Men would hopefully have two of these, one for work and one for good. But the records of churches in the area show that they had smocks on hand to provide the men if needed, especially if serving in an official capacity, such as being a pallbearer during a funeral. The smocks worked almost like choir robes would work today. Cottage industries existed in several areas of England to supply these frocks. The technique of embroidering on the pleats was referred to as biasing, gauging, plating, and by 1880, smocking. The smocks were made of a tough material, usually linen, and were often waxed. The Workwoman's Guide describes the smock as made of strong linen, and the biasing, or smocking, upon it is worked with the strongest glazed thread or cotton that can be procured. The shoulders and wrists, as well as the back, are biased with strong glazed thread in various patterns. The smocking helped shape the garment, but it also provided an extra layer of thickness and protection in those areas. Numerous references in English literature, including Thomas Hardy and Far From the Maddening Crowd, and paintings from that time refer to these garments. In this painting called Snowballing by John Morgan from 1865, the two boys in the center of the picture are wearing smocks. They're rolled up and tucked in their pants so they can more easily move during the fight. The Industrial Revolution put an end to the smock as a garment for city dwellers. The extra fabric was dangerous to have around machinery. By the end of the 1800s, the popularity of the smock as a practical garment for countrymen was also declining. Gertrude Jekyll, the famous English garden designer, wrote in 1904 that the old carter's smock frock, or round frock, still lingering, but on its way to becoming extinct. No better thing has ever been devised for any kind of outdoor wear that admits of the use of an outer garment. It turns an astonishing amount of wet. Just as the smock was losing favor as an outer garment for men, women's fashion was to come to the rescue. So in the late 1800s, women's fashion was rejecting the corset, primarily for health reasons, and embracing a looser, flowing style of dress. So smocking again stepped in and worked perfectly to help control the fullness. And you can see that in this photo of this beautiful dress from Liberty, which is from in the Victorian and Albert Museum. Now, Liberty, which was founded in 1875, began importing from India their tanalon and other lightweight cotton muslin fabrics that were perfect for smocking. They began to offer a dressmaking service, and their 1894 fashion catalog showed several designs that included smocking. In 1887, Weldon's published the first of 4 books on practical smocking for the home sewist, stating, quote, "When the rage for artistic dressing set in a few years ago, smocking was revived and brought into requisition for the ornamentation of ladies' and children's summer costumes, for lawn tennis dresses and Holland blouses, and so greatly has it increased in favor that it is now a recognized style of fashionable dress," unquote. Inspired by the Keay Greenaway dresses, see the smocking on the children's outfit in the picture here, Liberty followed up with a catalog called Artistic Dress for Children. So smocking continued to be fashionable in the early 20th century, which you can see in this child's outfit from 1890, again from the Victorian and Albert Museum. Smocking continued to be fashionable in the early 20th century, and the Butterick Pattern Company mentions it in a booklet published in 1902. With World War I, styles changed, and while smocking was still depicted, the styles were now simpler, and the Liberty 1916 catalog showed smocking used in working garments and children's clothes. And you can see that in this painting called Captured Unawares, the little boy wearing a smocked tunic top. Smocking on women's blouses and children's outfits were extremely popular in the 1920s and 30s, again with Liberty leading the way. According to the Book of Smocking by Diana Keay, quote, "It was the ambition of every mother to dress her daughter in a tanalon dress with rich, deep smocking," unquote. Again, here's a photo of some children's outfits from 1930 to 35 from the Victorian and Albert Museum. You can see on the little girl's dress, you have the standard bishop dress, which is still popular today with smocking around the neckline. And on the little boy's outfit, you see the smocking on either side of the bodice. Smocking continued to be popular in the 40s and 50s. In the 1950s, factories making children's clothes sent the dresses out to workers to be smocked by hand. In 1956, Reed introduced its smock gathering machine, which gathered 16 rows at once, and the chore of gathering the fabric into pleats could now be done on machine. Iron-on smocking dots were offered with patterns for those who did not or could not own a pleater or smock gathering machine. Smocking was taught by the National Federation of Women's Institutes in England, and the Chella Thornton Smocking book was published in 1951 in both the United Kingdom and Canada. Penelope produced two pamphlets, and Grace Knott published English Smocking in 1962 in Canada. In the 1970s, artists discovered smocking and its textural qualities and started to use it in artistic designs apart from clothing. The Smocking Arts Guild of America was formed in 1979 in the United States to help preserve and foster the art of smocking, and smocking continued to be popular through the 70s and 80s. Smocking has always been connected to clothing, and therefore in most situations to execute a smocking design, one needs to know how to sew and construct a garment. With the limitation and then removal of sewing as a curriculum from most schools, smocking has not been as popular now in the 21st century. Right now, in the summer of 2022, smocking is again popular, and we are seeing it especially showing up in women's garments for the first time in a long time. If you're interested in trying to smock for an older girl or possibly for yourself, I have a playlist on smocking for adults. Please be sure to check out some of those videos and see how you can add some smocking to a current adult garment. For those of us who love this art and want to continue to see it thrive, we face the difficulty of helping those who wish to learn not only how to smock, but also how to sew. It's my hope that with the renewed interest in handmade items and a rejection of uniform mass-produced clothing, that there will be a renewed interest in smocking. The internet, of course, has raised new possibilities, making this art form accessible to those who want to learn how to smock, and hopefully will carry on the tradition. And it's been the goal of myself through Pink Hollybush to help and encourage those who want to try this lovely form of stitching to be successful in doing so. If you would like to learn how to smock, please make sure to check out my Get Started Smocking video. It will walk you through all the basics. I also have a more detailed Learn to Smock course, and I'll put the links to both of those down here as well. In conclusion, let me leave you with a quote from Mrs. J.D. Rawlinston, who wrote in The Embroideress in 1924 that smocking was applied, quote, almost exclusively to garments worn by artists and children, the agricultural laborer and the shepherd having abandoned their beautiful smocks altogether. But they have left us a legacy of which we should be proud, and which should form the basis and inspiration of all our modern smocking, unquote. I hope you will give smocking a try. Happy smocking.